Hello everyone, I'm Pacchia and this is Bloomberg Law on Demand. All eyes on Washington, D.C. this week as Chinese President Hu Jiantao embarks on a 4-day state visit to the nation's capital. For a little perspective on the event, I'm happy to say we are joined by Kuhns. John is the CEO of the firm China Hydroelectric, as well as founding principal of investment banking firm Kuhns Brothers based here in New York. He is also the author of a new novel. It's entitled China Fortunes, and it lends a little bit of perspective on what it's like to do business as a foreigner in that country. John, thank you so much for coming in today. Welcome to the program. We have the two leaders of the two world powers meeting on a 4-day state visit in Washington, D.C. For companies like China Hydroelectric, how important is this event? What does it mean?
I think it's very important for us, just as it is for our colleagues in China, to be recognized by the sole superpower in the world. And as we've read, Chinese are very dependent on protocols and so forth. So this is a big deal for China, big deal for them, and for China Hydro as a foreign-owned hydroelectric power company in China, it's very important.
Right. I wanted to have you in today because you have such a unique perspective on the relationship between China and the United States. The company resides in the United States, but most of its assets and its work is in China. Where exactly do you see the relationship for these two countries, both at the moment, and where do you expect it to be in the next 12 months? It seems to be something of a shifting dynamic.
It is a shifting dynamically depending on who you talk to. I think for the average Chinese person, as well as most of the government leaders in China, they look at the United States as clearly one of their best friends and one of their best business partners. And I think that's inevitable for the years to come as far as they're concerned. I mean, there are some people within senior positions in China, the military, for example, who have their own axe to grind, and I think maybe they've thrown a few curveballs out there, but I don't expect that to prevail, and I really think it's very important for both Chinese and U.S. interests to remain very good friends as we are today.
It seems almost as if the tension points seems to change, at least from a top-line analysis over time. I remember a couple months ago, the big issue was the currency issue. It seems to be overshadowed by the market access issue in Washington. Do you even think currency is going to be discussed behind closed doors this week, or?
Lee, I think it will be mentioned simply out of a protocol point of view, but I think that issue is really behind us. I think you're right. Instead of currency today, parties on both sides, but certainly here in the U.S., we are focused more on trade imbalances and so forth. And quite honestly, I think it's more appropriate. If you think about it, currency problems aren't necessarily, at least in my mind, that valid. I mean, we're not going to be buying airplanes from China, and they're not going to be buying chaise lounges from us. So the currency issues, I think, are not that material because of that fact. But in terms of selling China airplanes, we've got to get our arrangements straight for trade over the next year or two.
In thinking about China and where it's been in the last 30 years, it's such a remarkable story. They've experienced such tremendous growth. And as we were saying before, there probably is going to come a point in time where that growth rate is going to slow. How do you anticipate China as a country and as a people dealing with something like that? What's that going to mean for the American economy?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the growth rate in China is going to slow. My colleagues and I generally estimate we've got about 10 years left. Now, what's going to be the logjam after that? China has a huge time bomb ticking, namely a very large aging population. Over 200 million of China's 1.3 billion people are currently over 65, and they have very few benefits provided to them by the government. Those are going to be big pressures for China, and they're going to have to shift their focus from really focusing on things like manufacturing goods to taking care of their own. So
and there's a lot of other problems on their plate as well. I mean, we were talking about inflation before, and China has a very volatile housing market as well. Do you think either of those two might manifest as top-line problems or issues before the 10-year time frame that you just alluded to?
Actually, Lee, I think those problems are going to crop up even this year. I think those problems are really significant problems, especially the housing problem. I mean, housing in the major cities like Beijing and Shanghai today is prohibitively expensive. But just shifting on another point, a gallon of milk in China costs $5.50. That's U.S. So those kinds of inflationary pressures are really impacting the common man in China, and the government's got to deal with them now.
Let's talk renewable energy for a moment. It's not only the space that China Hydro operates in, but it also marks an area of real collaboration and interdependence between the two powers. Why do you think that is?
Well, it's just like why it is that we're joined at the hip in so many other things. We've got some things they need and vice versa. We've got, in terms like of photovoltaics and so forth, we've got the key technology here. We've always had it ever since it was all put together by Bell Labs in the late 50s. Mm-hmm. China's got very low-cost labor and other manufacturing advantages. You can't have photovoltaics, though, with just one of those things. You got to have both. So they know that they've got to collaborate with us. And quite honestly, if we can get them to make the stuff, cheap solar panels, maybe finally it'll be cost effective here in places like Arizona. So I think both parties have an incentive to work together.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's so interesting about this state visit, while Chinese President Jiantao is in Washington, lots of deals getting done. We're getting word of a major deal involving transfer of coal regasification technology to China. Are we going to see more deals like this in the next 2 years?
Yes. Well, first of all, just I think politically it's very significant that they are announcing those deals. That means things are going according to plan, and I congratulate both leaders for getting that done. In terms of coal gasification, Lee, it's a critical technology for China. Why? Because that allows them to make an end around, if you will, their biggest problem with coal. Their biggest problem with coal is not that it's low BTU or that it's a low quality coal, but the transportation cost is transportation methodology, is killing them. They've got to truck that stuff from the coal fields. I think that's
fascinating. In America, we transport coal by railroad.
Absolutely.
China doesn't have a sophisticated rail system?
They don't have nearly what they need, and it's going to take them literally decades to dig their way out of that. So if they put a gasification plant on a coal mine, they can put up a power line and transmit the kilowatt hours down to Beijing that way.
In terms of transferring energy technology, what do you expect to be next?
Well, waste to energy would be a big area of focus for them. I mean, think waste, think electricity. Mm-hmm. China, bingo, right?
Exactly.
Waste to energy is really different, though, when you have a lot of household waste in your garbage supply, as opposed to carbonaceous materials like paper and plastics, which we have in ours. Mm-hmm. So you have to have different technology for that, and I think we can help them with that as well.
We'd also like to touch upon the Chinese energy law that was passed in 2005. Just what did it mean for a company like yours?
Well, it's critical for China Hydroelectric Corporation because it avoids, for the hydro sector, Lee, something called curtailment. Curtailment is when the grid, who's everybody's customer in China, it's a unit of the Ministry of Energy, says, oh, Lee, I've got enough juice from your plant until next week. I won't be buying anymore. That's how they manage the supply system with the coal-fired plants. Mm-hmm. With hydro, they said in this law, the Renewable Energy law, we're not going to curtail any hydro. Everything that John produces, by law, the grid must buy. Now, were they being heroic in doing that? Hardly, because hydro is the cheapest way to make a kilowatt hour in China. So it was
22% of Chinese energy comes from hydro. 22%. I was shocked to see that. That's a lot.
A lot of people are surprised. China is undoubtedly the hydro capital of the world, though, Lee. Nothing's even close. Brazil is the second largest. They're halfway down the chain.
Interesting stuff, John. We're going to have to see how it goes. That's John Kuhns. He's the CEO of China Hydroelectric, as well as the founding principal at Kuhns Brothers, an investment banking firm based here in New York City. For more on the issues we just discussed today, be sure to check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and on the Bloomberg Terminal. I'm Pacchia. Thanks for watching.